Bettering your business takes working with the best. With the James Hardie Alliance, you gain access to leads, training, networking, and support from the #1 brand of siding in North America. Achieve new levels of success by joining the James Hardie Alliance today.
In a so-called free state, officials and stakeholders concoct solutions to problems often created by other bureaucrats and with little regard for infringements on the people. These stories are born at the apex of freedom and entrepreneurship. We foolishly advocate for the taxpayer. Brian's Beat presents Freedom Fools.
It is a Saturday. What a day. Independence Day, arguably the greatest holiday of the year. And I do say arguably because that Thanksgiving, the feast, a little bit better, but a little bit colder too. You know, you take your holidays with a grain of salt. And, you know, I remember mentioning on Friday's show about fireworks and whatnot. And I've heard my share of fireworks over the past couple of nights. I'm going to talk about that in just a bit. But today is July 5th. 5th day of the year. 4th day of the second half of 2025. And welcome to Freedom Fools, one of numerous shows born at the apex of freedom, entrepreneurship, and nomadism. On this day, what else could it be but Bikini Day? And I've been looking around the pool, and I'm seeing some bikinis over at the pool where I live, but I can only imagine where it's been hot, 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 what it must look like at Apponequet, Pope, some of the other beaches, Horseneck. If anybody would like to let me know, 508-996-0500. Today is Bikini Day because the bikini was invented on this date way back when, before I was born. The bikini. It is Bikini Day. I'm going to leave it at that. It's Bikini Day. On this date in 1935, FDR Roosevelt signed the National Labor Relations Act into law. It happened to go this way because there had been lots of walkouts, pickets, and in some instances, rioting. Up in the San Francisco Bay Area, I believe quite a few people died from some of the rioting that had been taking place prior to the president signing the act into law in 1935. We do talk quite a bit about freedom. The law of return passed by the Knesset in Israel, which allowed Jews from anywhere to immigrate to Israel. And while all the power to the Knesset in passing that law, but here's a slight problem. And I think many of us are seeing it right now, whether we want to believe it or can hardly believe what we are seeing. You have this right of return, but do you have the space, legitimate space, to house all of the people that might want to return? And I think that is a major question that needs to be answered. And quite frankly, I haven't heard anybody ask it, so let me raise my hand. I am asking that question because that might help solve might help. I'm not saying it would. It might help solve some of the tension, some of the problems that we are seeing today. Just thought I'd throw that out there. 1971, certified. President Nixon, yes, he was certifiable, but he certified the 26th Amendment, lowering the voting age from 21 to 18. That happened 54 years ago. So let's say after 54 years, was it the right thing to do? I'm not talking about the president signing, but I'm thinking about the amendment in general. Should the voting age be 21? Or should it be 18 as it is right now? In some areas, they want to lower the voting age to 16. And I asked the question because as our school system, the government operated school system, seems to dumb down more the student, are they mentally prepared at 18 to vote? I question at 18 if they're mentally prepared not only to vote, but to register for the draft. If they are indeed prepared to be tried as an adult. I know there's some heinous crimes out there. I'm just saying, for those of us that can remember, 21 was not only the age for drinking alcohol, but for a lot of things, you were not considered an adult until you were 21. So as we talk about freedom and parenthood, I guess, voting at 18, good idea, bad idea. And happy 50th anniversary to Cape Verdeans and the islands of Cape Verde. Today they celebrate 50 years of independence. Let's have another parade, because I know quite a few people. In fact, I didn't go through downtown on my way to the radio station today because I knew it would be a pain in the butt to try to get by. So if you're Cape Verdean in particular, and you are 18, 19, 20, 21, and older, I'd definitely like to hear from you today. If you went to the parade, if you're celebrating 50 years, but if you are that age, 18 plus, is it a good idea or a bad idea for 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to be eligible to vote? Throwing that out there. All of this leads to the Brian's Beat quote of the day. You are where you are today because you have chosen to be there. You are where you are today because you have chosen to be there. That quote from Harry Brown, huge libertarian, way back when, two-time presidential candidate. As you know, he did not win. But I would love to be in the world where Harry Brown indeed won the presidential election the first time, which I believe was the year 2000. Wonder what would have happened if he was elected in 2000. What would have happened? Would we have had a 9/11 2001? And if we did have a 9/11 2001, would we have gone to war in Afghanistan? My guess is the Harry Brown that I knew, we would not have gone to Afghanistan, and we sure as heck would not have been in Iraq. We should change the name of Iraq to Iraq-it. But if I change names, all of a sudden I'm like the sitting president. Anyway, Harry Brown, you are where you are today because you have chosen to be there. So I was talking about fireworks and Independence Day. On Friday evening, a Wareham man was firing off. This is what the authorities believe. A Wareham man was firing off fireworks at the beach near Beach Street. And apparently, one of the fireworks went ba-boom in Robert's face. According to the district attorney's office, it caused traumatic injuries. It caused fatal injuries. Robert Spagnuolo, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, died from the injuries suffered because he chose to shoot off fireworks. It's a sad story. But I don't say this to try to detract you from firing fireworks. I know they are illegal, and in fact, the story at Channel 5 WCVB goes at length to remind me and anybody else who read their story or saw their story online or on TV that personal fireworks are illegal in Massachusetts. We're one of the few states that don't allow folks to fire off fireworks. We're one of the few states. And, of course, if you're like the city of New Bedford who shot them off Thursday night or some of the other areas that fired off fireworks yesterday, you need to have a state permit for the professional shows. Now, you know, like I know, people drive over to Rhode Island and pick up fireworks and they shoot them off. I don't know where this guy from Wareham got his fireworks. But if you are going to use fireworks, you need to be careful. And it doesn't mean that you're not extra careful and that an accident won't happen. I'm just saying you need to be careful. Now, let me go back to the story. Fireworks explode in this guy's face. Nobody else was hurt. I don't know who called 911 or whatever number they dialed. But because of this, the state police bomb squad got called to the scene. The state fire marshal's office called to the scene. When there is a death, Tim has reminded me that the district attorney's office will always investigate. But if fireworks and you got to call in the bomb squad? State fire marshal, I will give the benefit of a doubt on that. But the bomb squad? Really? And after interviewing several witnesses on scene, investigators determined that Spagnuolo was setting off fireworks at the beach when one exploded in his face. Wow. We called a lot of people in for that investigation when, quite frankly, the bomb squad could have been doing something else. I'm not going to try to pretend to know what. Again, the district attorney's office, because it was a death, they had to be there. By the way, I guess that means they were on scene at the auto accident on the bridge the other day, which I think was 1 day or 2 days prior to this incident in Wareham. I noticed in Texas that they're going through some massive flooding between Austin and San Antonio. I watched with woman friend for about a half an hour as the authorities were trying to figure out what happened, how people got stuck, hanging onto trees, 24 people dead. Crazy, absolutely crazy. And obviously a flood, flash or not, is a natural disaster. I was driving home from here Friday evening, made a pit stop at Stop and Shop. And as I came out of Stop and Shop, actually as I was traveling down 195, coming over the hump from Fairhaven down into New Bedford, some very ominous clouds, really dark clouds, were forming. And I said, this must be the storm that they were talking about on TV. But there was no rain. And I pulled into Stop and Shop on Fonts Corner Road, went inside, bought a couple of items, came back out, and the clouds were thicker, more ominous. And I said, yep, we're going to get hit here. I started driving behind the mall, and I came out onto Route 6 by the turnoff that would take you by Home Depot. And as I passed over Cross Road and I'm driving down by the Walmart, the rain just started to come, and then it got heavier and heavier. And where I make a U-turn by the strip club, I was wondering because the car was shaking all over the place from the wind. And the trees, they were doing the bikini dance. And I'm wondering, are these cars, these drivers that are coming my way, A, are they seeing me? Because that's how heavy the rain was at that particular time and in that short distance. And I'm wondering, are they going to be able to control their vehicle? Because the wind, if anything, would have been blowing them more toward where I am on the side of the street. I'm a little worried about this. They all go by, and I, scoot into the lot. I said, I'm going to run into the house. And I got soaking wet. We're talking maybe 15 yards. And woman friend is looking, all of a sudden she's getting out her phone. She wants to take pictures. She's never seen anything like this. I said, come on. But to her, it was something that she'd never seen before. And the tree limbs are down and stuff like that. Were you surprised? Even Barry, Barry made the comment, look, the Weather Service, other people told us that this was a possibility. I have to agree with them. Unless you were under a rock, you should have known that we were going to get pounded by some rain, whether you listen to our radio station because we have ABC 6 And they were telling us chance of this kind of a storm coming. The TV stations were saying the same thing. They were running bulletins and crawls telling you where it's going to hit next, how long there's going to be a storm watch in effect. But still, people got caught in it, and they were driving in it. It was what it was. But did it catch you? 508-996-0500. Brian, this is Freedom Fools on WBSM.
The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised.
Back up! Yeah, back up! That's right! That's right! Back up! Back up! You guys are Nazis!
Yeah, that stuff is still going on here in the United States. ICE making or trying to make a raid and being forced off the scene by protesters who see what's going on. And I got to hand it to the ICE officials in this particular case when they recognize that there are a lot of other folks that they presume anyway are U.S. citizens. They're not trying to fight them unless they get too close. If you could see some of the videos of the scenes that I've been watching, they back up. They don't pull out weapons, which is a good thing. And I guess they wait for another day. We'll see what happens. Oh, speaking of what happens, I mentioned earlier, 50 years ago today, Cape Verde gained its independence from Portugal. Now, I know we have a lot of Portuguese listeners. We have a lot of Cape Verdean listeners here in the backyard. And I'm not trying to stoke up the embers. But that freedom, it's something else. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we do Freedom Fools. And it's not just for our freedom, the one that we are celebrating this long weekend. And quite frankly, we should be celebrating 365 and or 366 days a year. And yet, sometimes I see, I perceive, I witness our freedoms slowly being chipped away. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing that I am. If you're not, I'd certainly love to hear your thought on it at 508-996-0500. On this date in 1811, not that we really care about it, but Venezuela came up with their Declaration of Independence. Their independence from Spain. And again, I don't expect this to be taught in world history, but I think that there are many folks around here that speak Spanish, and they might, and I should say as a primary tongue, and they might want to know this. In 1811, the Declaration of Independence was signed by 7 provinces declaring their independence from Spain. And things started out all right, and then there was an earthquake, and that earthquake led to an overturning of the government. But a few years later, they wrestled it back, and Venezuela at that particular time had a different name. I think it was called Gran Colombia, and it encompassed Colombia, I want to say Ecuador, don't quote me on that one, but the territory that is also known as Venezuela, and Panama. And as a kid, I did not realize this. I've known for about 20 years now that where the Panama Canal goes through, Panama is also on the other side. So in essence, Panama is on the South America side as well as the strip that we call Central America. There's really no such designated area as Central America. That's North America. But be that as it may, Panama, there's a little piece of Panama before you touch Colombia. So it's amazing. If it would be great to learn some of this stuff in school. I don't know where I'm going to use it besides today on the show, but who knows? Sometimes it's good to know. And nobody can turn around and say, well, that's critical race theory. No, it's knowledge. Also on this date, 1852, Frederick Douglass, who was a fugitive slave at the time, delivered his "What to the Slave is the 4th of July" speech. Now, he delivered this speech in Rochester, New York. He, as many of us know, condemned the celebration of Independence Day as hypocritical and a sham. I bring this to your attention today, and it ties in with the little piece that I did dealing with Gaza and Israel, who on this date, the law of return, as it's called. A lot of people have told me that if they had met Frederick Douglass, they would not have turned in the fugitive slave. Quite frankly, I'm glad to hear that they wouldn't. But let me ask you this question. If you were to meet up with someone that either told you or you knew for sure, was here illegally, would you try to turn that person over to the authorities? And why would you turn that person over to the authorities, but not Frederick Douglass? Again, we had the Fugitive Slave Act here in the United States that basically said didn't matter where the slave went to, whether he, she, it made their way to a free state or not, you were responsible for turning that person back in. I don't know how many times that happened in the free zone. My guess is it happened quite often in the not free zone. But now all 50 states are, quote, the free zone. Would you turn in someone who didn't have the proper paperwork or didn't have any paperwork? Why would you do it to that person, but you wouldn't do it to Frederick Douglass? Most people tell me, well, that was slavery. And yes, it was, but it was against the law to harbor a slave. And yet, many people did, certainly right here in our backyard, because Douglass got here, I believe, in the 30s, 40s, 1830s, 1840s. So he was a fugitive. Came here. I believe he got married here. And a few years later, he left here. A free person. But the way that I hear people talking about folks that are here illegally, because quite frankly, as a fugitive slave, Frederick Douglass was here and he was in upstate New York. Illegally. And believe me, I'm happy as a runaway slave, that folks would say that they would not turn in Frederick Douglass, but they are jumping up and down with glee at some of the things that ICE is doing, and to take it to the next unfreedom step, even when the federal government is going after people for protesting and taking people that have green cards and detaining them for who knows how many days, people are okay with it. People are okay with this Abrego Garcia story. They know, but they hear all the other charges. They don't even want to give the guy his day in court. So it makes me wonder if you would go after the illegals the way, let's get all 11 million. In fact, folks don't even care. They're loving alligator Alcatraz. And yet, I wonder, I really do. It's easy to sit in this chair today, being Saturday, July 5, 2025, and listen to people tell me why it would be okay for Frederick Douglass. I wonder, I really do wonder what their thought process would have been if this were 1852, 1842. Just judging by what I hear and what I see. We didn't have a problem back then. I think we got some big problems going on right now, not only with the intimidation factor, but the fact that our country is losing a lot of money right now. We're fighting or assisting in the war with Israel against the Gazans and the Lebanese, who aren't really fighting, but Israel says that they're going after Hezbollah. We assisted. Actually, we knew quite a bit about what Israel was doing against Iran. We have rearranged our naval forces to the Persian Gulf region. That's a lot of oil. That's a lot of fuel. And anytime that they fire rockets, that's another who knows how many $1 million to build the next one. We are losing a lot of money. So that's money going out. Obviously the big beautiful that was signed by the president yesterday, who by the way, and I'm not going to complain because Maura Healey did pretty much the same thing. Who signs big bills into law on Independence Day? I'm pointing the finger at President Trump. I'm pointing the finger at Maura Healey. What are you thinking? People aren't going to see this? You don't think folks aren't? What's the purpose? I mean, you could have done it the night before. Both of them had the wherewithal to have done it the night before. Or if you really wanted to do it on the weekend, you could have done it today. What's the significance of signing into law the budget for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the budget for the United States of America? Big, beautiful. I don't get it. 508-996-0500. So if you can explain it to me, and I find it hard to believe that you can, not that I think you're ignorant or dumb. I just think it really defies an explanation. Maura Healey, she kind of hinted at it, that the legislature got the bill to her before the end of the fiscal year, June 30. And so, and by the way, that was the first time since, I believe, 2016 that's happened, courtesy of our legislature. So the governor felt that it was the right thing to do. I have not had a chance to read the budget bill. $60.9 billion. $60.9 billion. With $130 million in vetoes. And the governor wants more power. Power to make cuts. In case, and look, I think in this particular case, she and the legislature are thinking properly along the right lines here. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts does not know how much money it is going to receive from the federal government. And because they don't know how much is coming, the governor says she wants to be able to make some more cuts if necessary. My personal way of looking at it is that those cuts should have been made right away. Why? You can always add back on at another time. Make the cuts now so the people know. If you start this fiscal year with the expectation that the money's going to be there, and then you go to take it away, nobody likes that. This is part of transparency, or the lack thereof of transparency. The fact that cuts might be made. And now you've got a legislature, basically what the governor is trying to do is pin it on the legislature. Look, I want to be able to make these cuts. I believe she is saying it in such fashion as to know the legislature well enough. That's why we call them Bacon Hill lawmakers. So I think she wants to be able to say on the campaign trail, well, I tried, but the legislature wouldn't let me do it. Boy, we are stuck. The part of the cuts, part of the $130 million. How about this? And I mean, this tells you a lot about Massachusetts politics and Massachusetts government. Part of the cuts are a 2% pay raise for thousands. I didn't say 5 or 10, thousands of executive branch managers. The pay raises were supposed to start in January. That's going to save about $17 million. Deep down, I know you're thinking, well, $17 million isn't much when you're talking about a $60.9 billion budget. You've got to start somewhere. You've got to start somewhere. And the reason we have such a bloated budget in the first place, $60.9 billion. Remember, it was just a few years ago when it topped $50 billion. And I know we're going to go back quite a few years, but it really wasn't that long ago that the budget chokes me up, that the budget was under $1 billion. This is where we are right now. And I know cost of living, everything goes up. One of the reasons everything goes up is because the cost of government goes up. I'm just talking about the state government right now. Cities and towns, look what's going on at the local level. Teachers want paid family leave. All of this is happening. And it's leaving the yous and me's scratching our head. How are we going to pay for something else when we're forced to pay for this? New Bedford now has a central kitchen. A central kitchen. And I say now has, they had one before, but I mean, this thing is state of the art. Instead of getting to the point where, look, there are people that have called me up and told me that when lunch happened at school, they went home for lunch and then came back. That's an idea. Another idea would be to bring lunch from home. I used to do that for the first 5 years of school. And I know somebody's going to say, well, what about the people that don't have money at home that they can't afford? They can't afford to have their kids bring food from home. I'm not going to be an idiot and say that doesn't happen. But my point would be, if we get into real means testing, folks, I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe folks would be willing to pay the much lesser amount to make sure the kids that really need food have food than to pay for the bloated bureaucracy. Now, somebody's going to call and say, oh, the taxpayer doesn't pay for that central kitchen. Like hell they don't. Now, this might have come from ESSER monies, but let me tell you something. Your ESSER monies that you paid in goes for a central kitchen in Iowa, or more books for the classroom in Texas. So indeed, you are paying for it. Just like if the school system ever gets to having that health center, you'll get school committee members, you'll get the mayor saying, hey, This was a unique formula for funding, and it's not going to cost the taxpayer. You turn around and tell them, bull. It is costing us. It may not be every penny that I put in here locally, but the pennies that I do put in here are going somewhere else. That, my friend, is not taxation with representation.
Give me liberty or give me death.
Everyone gets due process, and that is what the U.S. Attorney's Office is for. It's what the immigration courts are for. They all do that. He will go in front of an immigration judge. He'll have the opportunity to post bond.
Welcome back. ABC is going to let us know what they want us to know in a couple of minutes. And as we make our way up to that particular time, next hour, I want to talk about a different type of freedom. And that's the freedom for women and men to work in the sex trade business and not be arrested for doing so. Now, I'm not talking about human trafficking or sex trafficking. I'm talking about the right of the man or the woman to sell their body for profit, basically. Now, I know a lot of people are, shaking, well, why? But isn't that their business? It seems to work in other countries, seems to work very well in Nevada. So what about here? The reason why I'm bringing this up, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts actually has a bill that I believe is going to be heard next week in order to study making this happen. And it doesn't sound like just, we're going to study it and throw it in the trash bin for a while. I think they are serious about trying to come up with a way to make prostitution, like marijuana, legal here in the Commonwealth. Your thoughts after we hear from ABC. 80 in Wareham, 81 in Seekonk, 79 in New Beige.